Traditional security tools like firewalls and antivirus are not enough. We need multiple layers of security because every day, thousands of new threats and legitimate programs are introduced before their signatures are added to antivirus databases. In this webinar, we'll discuss market trends, reasons for increased adoption, and best practices for application control. What specific capabilities should you look for in a commercial solution? How can you effectively implement an application control solution? What are the security and operational benefits of using application control reinforced with managed administrative privileges? We'll address those questions and more with two of the leading experts in the industry, Gartner analyst Neil MacDonald and Viewfinity CEO Leonid Shitlman. They'll offer use cases and practical advice on how to harness the power of marrying application control and privilege management solutions to form a best-in-class security solution. And we begin with Neil MacDonald. Neil is a Vice President, Distinguished Analyst, and Gartner Fellow Emeritus for Information Security and Privacy Research at Gartner, focusing on securing next-generation virtualized and cloud-based computing environments from advanced attacks. Neil, welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Now, application control through default deny policies has been on the market for some time now, and you followed it quite closely. Could you speak to some of the trends you've seen as this market has evolved?
Sure. So a couple of the key trends that we're seeing with application control technologies, and also commonly referred to as application whitelisting technologies. Number one, increasing interest from customers. We performed a survey at the end of 2012, and we reached out and asked customers, have you implemented or considered application control solutions? And we define this as limiting the apps that an endpoint can install and run. And 21% came back and said, yeah, we're already doing that. We're using one of the vendors that offers a solution in this area. We're already doing that. 22%, slightly higher number, said, yes, we're actively considering it. So they're evaluating these types of solutions and technologies. Another 29% said, well, we don't let users have admin rights, and so we're trying to restrict what they can install. If you add all those up, 80%, the vast majority of organizations are moving to more restricted end-user computing environments. And application control technologies, whitelisting technologies, are one of the ways that they're doing that. Now, why are they doing that? That's a second key trend. Root cause is the traditional signature-based protection. We call it antivirus, right? The signature-based protection is increasingly ineffective. Large number of attacks, large number of variants, financially motivated and targeted attacks are missed by traditional signature-based protection. So we need to change the model from one that's rooted in blacklisting, which is embodied with antivirus protection, to one that's rooted in whitelisting, a default deny posture with application control technologies. And what's really driving the interest is the third key trend. It is this increase in advanced targeted attacks, also referred to as advanced persistent threats. But when an adversary comes after you and your intellectual property and specifically targets your system for financial motivations, by definition, you're not going to have a signature. No one else has ever seen this. They're only coming after your stuff. And AV in no way will protect you. And the best way to protect those systems is going to be a default deny posture, some form of application control and whitelisting technology. This has occurred in the news in many high-profile events over the past several years, going back to Google with Project Aurora, and more recently in 2013 with the attacks on the New York Times allegedly by the Chinese. These targeted attacks residing undetected for periods of months. AV, completely ineffective. Application control and whitelisting would have prevented these attacks. And the last key trend is people realizing, yes, this application control paradigm, a default deny posture, it can be applied to desktops. I believe there's some misperception rooted in the past that we can't use these types of techniques on desktops. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later.
What factors do you attribute to a successful, and for that matter, unsuccessful, application control project and implementation?
Well, there are many best practices for successfully deploying application control technologies. Let's start first with a few in the planning phase. Let's make sure we have agreement on what the project's goals are and the priorities. There will be both operational benefits and security benefits to an application control project, and it's important to decide up front who's on top, which priorities take precedence, because invariably we're going to have to make some decisions where there are trade-offs involved, typically how tightly we're going to control these desktops. So, for example, on the operational side, we may use cost justification based on a reduction in help desk calls or a reduction in the number of reimages. On the security side, we may use a justification based on protection from advanced targeted attacks and overall risk reduction. All of these are typically goals of these application control projects, but which ones take precedence if we need to make trade-offs as we roll this out? So putting together the project team across operations and security and agreeing on the project goals and priorities, as well as deciding how we're going to justify the project, typically will be based on cost savings from efficiencies from the IT operations side. Another best practice while you're planning for application control is don't underestimate the cultural change issues. If you're in an environment where you've had end users doing anything they want and running with administrative privileges for the past 10, 15, 20 years, then moving to a more controlled environment will encounter some pushback. End users believe that those desktops are theirs, and they are best suited to decide what to run on them. And any move by IT or security is seen as an encroachment on their personal computer. So we need to have executive sponsorship and buy-in at a high level. Who's behind this project? What are the reasons, as we talked about a moment ago? Because invariably you will have complaints if you've come from an environment where end users could install and run anything that they wanted. And that leads to another best practice while you're planning for application control. Let's start with some of the easier use cases. Let's start with, for example, servers or fixed function devices or kiosks or embedded devices such as process controllers or ATMs or SCADA equipment. These are great candidates for applying a whitelisting application control model. Then we can move to users that have more well-defined work environments, like a call center. They've got fixed desktops. The work that they perform on a day-to-day basis is very well-defined. They make great candidates for this type of approach. If you have laptop users and they're road warriors, they're not going to be the best use case to start with. So the best practice is let's start with the cases that are easiest. We can get some of these wins under our belt and then move to other types of users. So as you roll this out and as you look at the different vendors, look for a vendor that can support end-user desktop scenarios. The difference between a server and a desktop, when you look at these application control solutions, is quite stark. Servers lead relatively boring lives, and we can take advantage of that with a whitelisting-based approach. But end users, on the other hand, have very dynamic compute environments. Therefore, as we're designing and selecting an application control technology vendor, we need to choose one that understands the complexities of dealing with dynamic end-user desktop environments and that can handle change and support this notion of trusted change. Change in the sense that there are updates to applications that users run, updates to Windows, updates to Office, updates to Java, updates to Adobe, as well as end users want changes that they initiate. new software, new types of packages that weren't there previously, that IT hasn't seen before. So we need a type of solution that can support end-user desktop environments and can support dynamic change. And then finally, as you're looking at rolling this out, let's roll out to a pilot group first. Ideally a group that's friendly to IT, ideally a group that has these well-defined work usage scenarios like a call center or like kiosk or a clerk in a retail branch. Let's roll out to these pilot groups, and first, before we start blocking applications, let's roll these out in observation mode. Let's learn what they have, get an idea of what rule set we might apply before defining the final rule set. And then slowly we can turn this on over time. So don't plan on a one-size-fits-all strategy. Don't try to roll it out all at once. And when you do roll out, let's go out in an observation mode first before actively blocking applications.
Neil, why do you believe application control and privilege management should be offered as a combined solution?
Earlier, when I talked about the survey data, where we had asked people, have they implemented or considered application control? If you remember, 22% said we're actively looking at it, 21% said we're already doing it, and another 29% said we've reduced and removed administrative rights from our end users. There's a common goal here between application control and whitelisting and removing admin rights. The common goal is to improve our overall security profile at the endpoint. Now, most whitelisting and application control solutions, the idea is users can retain administrative rights and you just restrict what they run to the whitelist, to a list of predefined, pre-approved applications. The alternative would be, well, let's remove admin rights, let's just run you as standard user, and you can get some security improvements there. But the disadvantage by just removing administrative rights is a well-written application, something like Google Chrome or Firefox, two great examples. These applications will install and run correctly even when users are running as standard user. It's a common misconception that a standard user cannot install and run software. Indeed, they can. So the question is, what are you trying to solve with this project? If you truly want to exert more control, the best answer is going to be, let's remove admin rights and let's implement some form of application control and whitelisting. It's the intersection of these two. And ideally, the solution that you choose would support both of these use cases. Let's remove admin rights. Let's restrict the applications that they can run. And in the case that we have some legacy application that still requires admin rights, let's retain the ability to elevate that on an exception basis. A good product will solve both problems so that you don't require one solution for application control and another solution for privilege management. Ideally, one product could solve both problems, and it's the intersection of application control and running a standard user that will give you the most impact and the most risk reduction for endpoint security. There's an additional benefit to removing administrative rights from end users. Most malware that targets a machine and actively targets a vulnerability in something like Office or in Windows, most malware runs in the context of the logged-in user. And if you can get these users running with standard user rights rather than administrative rights, your exposure to any type of malware against any type of vulnerability is greatly reduced. Also, by removing administrative rights, we limit the ability of the end user to deactivate and alter their security controls. So one risk, if you're still running as admin and you load an application control technology, One risk is they figure out a way to deactivate it. So at a minimum, you need tamper resistance. But ideally, you have a product that allows you to remove admin rights, elevate where needed, therefore protecting the integrity of the security controls on the machine.
What are the top, say, 3 to 5 concerns organizations have related to this type of project, and how are they best addressed?
Here's the top concerns that I'm hearing as I talk with organizations that are considering application control technologies. First, they're concerned about the resources that might be required. So typical antivirus technology they've had for years. They know it, they understand it, they're staffed for it. But when you get to something like application control and whitelisting, there will be additional resource requirements. First, as you roll this out, somebody has to help build and construct the whitelist to begin with. So we need to automate that process as much as possible. And then as we talked about earlier, a desktop environment has a significant amount of change, and we need to automate as much of that change as possible. We need vendors, solutions that support this notion of trusted change. So it's the resources. Are they staffed appropriately? Because that will be a key element for success. Another concern is, will this really work for desktops? Again, this approach of whitelisting and application control works very well for servers and fixed desktops, but it's harder on dynamic desktops. Dynamic computing environments, especially when you get to laptops and power users and mobile workers, it's harder. It doesn't mean it can't be done. And again, I believe the key is this notion of trusted change. Rather than try to manage on a file-by-file basis, let's abstract and manage the sources of change that are allowed to take place on that endpoint and automate as many of these sources of change as possible. And that feeds directly back to number one, which helps to minimize the number of people that I need to have involved. Because invariably, there will be exceptions. There will be a user that needs to run an application that IT has never seen before, where we don't recognize the signature of the publisher. We've never seen this particular vendor before, and we're going to have to make decisions. So we want to automate as much of that as possible. And the third key concern is one of culture. Will the users accept it? We are moving to an environment where the corporate-issued desktop and set of resources will have tighter amounts of control. And this is a particularly difficult problem if organizations are moving from environments where end users could do anything. That's why a key best practice is to obtain an executive sponsor, someone outside of IT, someone high in the business that understands the value of what IT and information security are trying to do, why they're doing it, and helping to articulate this as the project is rolled out. And another key concern is, well, what if some users don't accept it? Well, don't take a one-size-fits-all strategy. Again, start with easier deployment scenarios. Servers, embedded devices, fixed desktops. Maybe the mobile power user, we just don't apply this particular approach. Don't count on a one-size-fits-all strategy. Don't try to fit everyone into a predefined mold. Let's stage this according to use case.
Neil, recently we've been hearing that there is a market shortage when it comes to IT professionals covering all areas within IT security, architects, security operations, deployment resources, and so on. What type of automation should be built into application control solutions to help deal with these personnel shortages?
One of the keys to a successful application control deployment will be automating as much of the process as possible. I'm going to make a statement that sounds counterintuitive, but I'm going to explain exactly what I mean. The key to application control is not to control applications. Now, it sounds paradoxical, but what I mean here is there is no way we can manage an application control deployment on a desktop on a file-by-file, exe by exe, or DLL by DLL basis. It simply won't scale. We have to choose a vendor and a solution that can manage sources of trusted change. How should change be propagated to that desktop? For example, I'll trust an application if it's digitally signed by Microsoft. So I don't need a rule that says trust Excel.exe and trust Word.exe and trust PowerPoint.exe. One rule, trust Microsoft Apps, covers me for everything they've written and everything they will write. That one rule covers potentially thousands of use cases. And that's just one example. Do I want to trust, for example, Apple software or Adobe's software or Oracle software? So digital signatures are an excellent example of aggregating and basing policy on sources of trusted change rather than manage on a file-by-file, application-by-application basis. But there are other examples. What about if software comes through IT software distribution agent? You very likely have some agent that's been deployed to every endpoint that distributes software. Let's set one rule that says if it comes through that pipe, that agent, that process that's running on the machine, then trust it. So if it comes through IT's pipe, we'll trust it. So the new packages that you deploy, automatically trusted, automatically added to the whitelist without anybody having to manually add anything. Other examples, if you download it from this URL, I'll trust it. So you might have some trusted sites, or you might have a trusted file share within your network. Hey, if you need this app, go over here to the F drive, and we've placed all of the applications there. So you download it from that site, that share, I'll automatically trust it. There are many, many examples just like this where we aggregate and identify sources of trusted change, and we manage those, not a file-by-file basis. So that's one way we move towards high levels of automation to help successfully deploy application control. Now, another one is workflow. You will have exceptions. There will always be something that we encounter that we have never seen before and that we don't have a digital signature for. It doesn't come from a site that we're aware of. So what's the workflow? From two perspectives. One, from the end user's perspective, what happens? Are they prompted with a screen? Are you able to customize the screen? Can they initiate a workflow for approval? Does it automatically go to their manager? If it goes to their manager, then does it go to the help desk? Or who ultimately approves this end user to run this application if it's not on the whitelist? But automating and providing out-of-the-box workflow as much as possible helps in that situation. And then finally, think about that approval process. Ultimately, an end user wants to run application abc.exe, and it's been approved by their manager, the workflow's been routed, it gets to the help desk. Should they allow this person to run abc.exe or not? How do they know if it's malicious? What if it's one of those advanced targeted attacks that we talked about earlier? And that's the final piece to the puzzle. A good solution should have a way to fill in the shades of gray. It's not known to be good because we didn't automatically add it to the whitelist, didn't have the right digital signature, for example. It's not necessarily known to be bad, didn't fire a signature on our AV engine, so I want to look to the cloud, some community-based reputation service, and ask, have you ever seen this before? Help me fill in those shades of gray. Help me manage the gray list. So the combination of these, high levels of automation, workflow, and cloud-based, community-based reputation services are key elements to a highly automated and successful application control deployment.
Where is application control on the Gartner hype cycle?
Application control is positioned just past the trough of disillusionment on the Gartner hype cycle. And that's a good thing. That means that organizations that are looking at deploying application control now can benefit from the learnings of the organizations that went before them. So best practices are being established. And we've talked about many of those today. Barriers to adoption are being lowered. We talked about the importance of high levels of automation and workflow and the use of gray listing and cloud reputation services. And it reflects the growing interest from customers, as we talked about with the survey data indicating increasing interest in application control, and one of the key drivers being helping to protect from advanced targeted attacks that traditional signature-based approaches simply cannot detect. That's why application control is coming out of the trough of disillusionment and is becoming widely accepted as a mainstream technology.
Neil, thank you very much.
Thanks, and it was my pleasure to be here.
Neil MacDonald is a research vice president at Gartner. And now I'd like to welcome Viewfinity CEO Leonid Shitlman to the program. Prior to Viewfinity, Leonid served as senior vice president of CA Incorporated, which acquired Exosoft, a company that Mr. Shitlman founded in 1999. He has served in various positions at NASA, MIT, and Princeton University, and was a tenured professor at Tel Aviv University and the City University of New York. Leonid, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here today.
So why is the Viewfinity solution different from other application control solutions on the market today?
Yeah, there are several solutions on the market, but all of them require so much control over the end users and harsh restrictions on IT organizations that these solutions have not yet been adopted for mainstream endpoint protection. I can give you an analogy. If the majority of the population is working for the police, will this sharply decrease the crime rate? Certainly yes, but this is not a feasible approach. Viewfinity's solution for endpoint security is the only realistic answer to combat advanced threats. In theory, the problem of advanced threats seems simple. Put malicious software on the blacklist, put the known good applications on the whitelist, and your job is done. Indeed, this is the idea some vendors have been pushing for quite some time. Implementation of this idea is not a trivial task, since administrators need to decide the color of each application. Is it white or black? Moreover, administrators must decide about the color of the process which updates the software on the whitelist. For instance, it needs to be decided if the process Adobe Updater.exe is the actual process for updating Adobe products, or is it malicious software which has penetrated your system? Taking into account that databases of security vendors contain billions of executables, the task is burdensome. This is the main reason that application control solutions are currently implemented only in highly regulated organizations, or in environments with a very narrow whitelist, for example, point-of-sale kiosks. It is also clear that such solutions require a substantial amount of professional services and a dedicated team to manage the solution. Viewfinity approach is more realistic and more feasible. So Viewfinity provides every feature needed for whitelisting, from trusted sources and updaters to a cloud-based system which can rank executables not yet classified. But more importantly, it can automatically handle all unclassified applications, what we call the gray list, by automatically placing any unknown executable on the gray list and allowing it to run in a sandbox. In this sandbox mode, applications are allowed to execute, but can run with standard privileges only, and further restrictions are definable by the administrator. For example, all gray-listed applications shall have limited access to corporate data and cannot access network shares, servers, removable storage devices, and external sources such as the Internet.
Could you share your company's strategy and reasoning for extending your flagship privilege management product to a full application control solution?
Let us first talk about our flagship product. Viewfinity is the leading privilege management solution provider. This solution is a realistic extension to the Microsoft model in which users either have rights as a standard user or as an administrative or power user. Clearly, standard mode is more secure than administrative mode, but the restrictions realized in standard mode operation make the end user's life very difficult. End users in turn put a lot of pressure on the IT organizations, since many simple tasks cannot be done without help from support engineers, from defragmenting the hard drive to updating business software. The pressure IT organizations get from executives demanding administrative rights force IT to provide administrative rights to executives. Employees who are frequently working from home offices or traveling ask for administrative rights. In short, all too soon, many computers end up with administrative rights. Viewfinity offers granular privilege right management, whereby an administrator can elevate rights for a particular system function or software vendor for a limited time. In some sense, it is just another aspect of the whitelisting approach that we just discussed, reinforcing a realistic model for endpoint security. Viewfinity's customers are very successfully securing their endpoints through efficient and simple management of administrative rights, and they have asked us to extend our privilege management capabilities to include full application control and whitelisting. Application whitelisting, managing trusted sources, forensic analysis and monitoring, and utilization of reputation database are natural extension to our current solution. There is a great danger when allowing administrative rights in a whitelisting model. Users that retain administrative rights may attempt to bypass or uninstall application control agent, and attackers may target the whitelisting mechanism to get bad code recognized as legitimate. There are not only security benefits, but cost reductions as well when exerting more control on end-user desktop with application control. Most projects will benefit through a reduction in help desk calls and desktop reimaging after implementing application control software. We took our customers' advice and the advice of prominent analysts who follow this market to create a winning combination that ensures a least risk environment. We are pleased to be the first and only vendor to offer an automated method for handling applications not yet classified, our gray list capabilities, so that users may continue to work without interruption while assuring IT the environment continues to be secured.
Leonid, the graylist capabilities, as you've termed them, are Viewfinity's way to automate the management of the application control solution. Could you give us 2 or 3 different use cases for the restrictive mode that add immediate value to the organization, and why?
Let's begin with the definition of a whitelist. A whitelist is a list of applications almost exclusively related to the business needs of end users, which are allowed to run on the end user's computer. Inclusion on the whitelist, by definition, includes permissions and rights related to all necessary aspects to run an application. The right to execute, access to needed data, elevation of rights, if such elevation is required, and so on. Yet, if in a whitelisting environment all users still run as administrators, the environment is not secure, even if only approved applications are permitted. One of the most important use cases that validates the Viewfinity solution is that all whitelisted applications run in standard user mode, even if an application explicitly requires administrative rights. When this is the case, we simply elevate the privileges for the application, not the user. This dual approach provides added protection and is indeed one of the most relevant use cases. Another important use case is the special treatment of the blacklist. Viewfinity not only blocks designated executables, which is a relatively straightforward part of the solution, but also provides full forensic information. By forensic information, I am referring to the source of the applications, who installed it and when, how it was installed, and by whom and when this application was modified. This information also includes grandfathers and great-grandfathers. All this accessible via our centralized console, allowing IT to perform application audits, apply policies, or review screen-recorded video that records all attempts to install or use this software in your environment, which is ideal for auditing and forensic purposes. The third use case is our gray list, which automatically places applications not already whitelisted or blacklisted onto a gray list, while still allowing users to continue to work with the application. Gray-listed applications run in a restrictive sandbox mode, standard user mode, no access to corporate shares noted on the restrictive list, no access to specified corporate servers, and no access to the open internet. Today there are many discussions in the press that highlight the need for several layers of protection. The constant stream of zero-day attacks and malware variations had made this approach necessary to combat the infiltrations. This is indeed what our solution provides in a very targeted manner. By running antivirus only on applications on the gray list, substantially optimizes and enhances the efficiency of antivirus, and with the antivirus screening adding another protective filter, this shrinks applications on the gray list to a minimum. The antivirus screening makes the job of the application control tools more efficient when running through its trusted sources and reputation database filters. All three use case examples, whitelist, forensic mode of blacklist, and restrictive mode of gray list, summarize a realistic and efficient approach for how IT can better manage endpoint security.
I understand you've extensively reviewed the new solution with prospects and customers. What are the features they believe to be most salient?
It may sound cliché, but every IT organization is interested in working less to provide to their users with more. Solutions that increase pressure on IT organizations and disrupt user productivity are usually not welcome. We interviewed both IT security and those folks who take care of IT operation. It is a joint effort, and both groups had tangible objectives. We found that security group often drives the project as their charter is to secure the infrastructure. And the operation team realizes the most significant cost center savings. For our customers, the most important part of any management solution is automation. And I mean automation of every aspect of the Viewfinity solution. I will give you just few examples of the automation requested. First, a method for automating trusted sources for the whitelist, trusted by a vendor's digital signature, trusted by the source of the installation program like SCCM, trust the OS golden image, by location of the installation package on a corporate network, and so on. The rules covering trusted sources automatically aggregate to more general rules and thus improve visibility and manageability of the process. Another example is the automatic support of trusted updaters. Indeed, once your software is on whitelist, future versions of the software should automatically be whitelisted. While practical, in theory, this is complicated to do because each updater for software has its own procedure for updating. Thus, whitelisting vendors must design and implement special updaters for each software package. It is a labor-intensive feat for both the solution vendors and for the administrators using their product, which in practice means that not all packages are supported. Viewfinity invented a method that automates this process, and practically all updaters are supported. Another unique approach is how we treat applications that are on the gray list. And I say unique because any unknown applications is allowed to run where it would be blocked by other whitelisting vendors. But the actions and reach of these applications are automatically restricted. We restrict access to shares, access to servers, the ability to use a USB drive. We protect the registry and restrict access to the internet. With the inherent automation, we minimize the need for intensive professional services, minimize the number of IT personnel managing our solution, and thus sharply decrease in companies' total cost of ownership. All this, in addition to well-known cost benefits related to decreasing the cost of day-to-day operations. The difference in operating costs for a locked-down and unmanaged computer is sharply higher than the cost of the appropriate software. What can be more salient than automation and reduction of TCO? And finally, we offer a built-in automated policy approval workflow process for requests coming directly from users. While nearly all applications will be processed automatically because of the features inherent in the solution, we know that there will be always requests from users that need to be handled, and we do this automatically. For any user-initiated requests, details about the request, the user, and the application are captured and routed to the Viewfinity console or help desk ticketing system. Approval or denial notifications, fully customizable, are sent to the user, and any new or changed policy is automatically created and propagated.
Leonid, when is this product available, and what resources are available to help companies research and evaluate Viewfinity's application control product?
The product will be available late April. Once the product is available, anyone interested can register to evaluate the product, and we will also have white papers, brochures, a flash video, and demonstration clips available on our website to help with research projects.
Leonid, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Leonid Shitlman is the CEO of Viewfinity, and thanks again to Gartner Research Vice President Neil MacDonald for his insights. To find out more about application control and how to find the right solution for your organization, please visit www.viewfinity.com. Thank you.
Gartner is an impartial, independent analyst of the information technology industry. All content provided by other enterprises is expressly the views of those enterprises and the speakers. The information should not be construed as a Gartner endorsement of said enterprise's products or services.